Hello, and welcome to the No Wrong Notes podcast, a show hosted by me, Veronica Kokos, holistic voice teacher and singer just like you. Grab a cup of tea, relax, and sit back as we discuss all things singing technique, mindset tips, and more so you can show up as the most confident and creative singer you can be. Welcome to the No Wrong Notes podcast. If you're new here, I'm glad that you could tune on in because this week we're covering a big topic, which is why singing goals fail. This is a tough topic because, of course, every singer is different, so even as I'm giving these examples that I've seen over my years of teaching, every situation is unique. And this episode is also not meant to pass judgment on anyone who has experienced these situations. I'm truly a believer in the idea that every experience can serve as a learning experience, even the things that we view as failures or mistakes. But I wanted to share this episode to serve as a reminder that when you're on your own singing journey and working towards your singing goals, sometimes we fail, and it's worth being compassionate and kind with ourselves when we do fail. Failure can also teach us a lot and can help us set better, more realistic goals so that we might avoid the same pitfalls in the future. That's why I wanted to share this episode, because mistakes and failures are not things to be afraid of or ashamed about, but rather things to learn from. So I hope you can learn something from this episode. Let's dive into the first reason why singing goals fail. This first reason that singing goals fail is because the goal is too vague. So often when I ask students about their singing goals, students will say, I just want to feel more confident, or I want to sound good. And while I think every goal has to start somewhere, it's worth getting specific. What would feeling confident look like? What would you need to know about your voice in order to feel more confident? Maybe it's that you don't know a lot about vocal technique at the moment and aren't sure how to use your voice when singing. In that kind of situation, I'd say that gaining experience using different techniques and vocal exercises might get you the kind of knowledge that you desire, so that you can feel confident singing in front of people. You could then rephrase your goal as something like, I want to learn skills and vocal techniques that help me feel good about my singing voice so that I can feel confident singing in front of others. Honestly, you could probably get even more specific with that kind of goal. If you want to do things like belting, you want to belt on stage and feel confident when you do it, well, then you got to learn some techniques and skills to help you belt. The point here is to decide what it is that you're really looking for when it comes to your singing goals. And it sounds obvious, but it does work. As I've worked with students over the years, the students who are more specific when it comes to their goals accomplish and end up making bigger strides vocally overall. The next reason that singing goals fail is because they are too big. To illustrate this one, I'll give you an example. At one point, I was working with two students who wanted to be singer-songwriters. Obviously, that's a big goal in and of itself. Again, we were just talking about goals being kind of vague and that kind of being a problem. And student A just told me that they wanted to be a singer-songwriter point blank, but they didn't really have an idea of what that would look like, as in whether they wanted to focus first on writing and recording to publish music on a streaming platform, or write music to perform locally and get gigs. They also wanted to do all kinds of technical work, which is great, of course, but essentially the goal was so big for them and they wanted to do so many things with their singing that they got overwhelmed and lost direction. There's nothing wrong with what this student did. I think we all find ourselves dreaming big at some point, almost too big at times. And this is why self-compassion is huge. If you do find yourself in the same position as this student and your goals overwhelm you, be kind to yourself when you miss the mark and reconsider how to break your larger goal into smaller steps. As I mentioned earlier, I had two students, and student B wanted to be a singer-songwriter, but they approached their larger goal a bit differently and chose to break their goal into smaller steps. Their first step, or mini goal, was to write and record 3 songs in 3 months in the music recording software that they had. They set a deadline for themselves, and once they accomplished that goal, they knew that their goal was more oriented towards getting onto Spotify and other streaming platforms first. So they connected with a local recording studio to re-record the songs in a more professional settings and get the songs polished. They released their songs on streaming platforms and are now focused more on performing live while also putting together new songs. As you see in this example, the student knew what their bigger goal was, which was to be a singer-songwriter, and then they broke that goal into smaller, more achievable steps. Like I said, there's nothing wrong with the student whose goal was a little bit too big and scattered. We are all doing our best at any given moment, but narrowing the focus of your goals can better help you achieve them, since you'll be able to outline the exact steps to get there. The last reason that singing goals fail is because the goal isn't really compatible with the singer's schedule. What I mean by this is that the singer has chosen a goal that requires a greater time investment than they have the capacity for. And there's nothing inherently wrong with this, but if you're trying to commit yourself to a goal that takes hours and hours of practice per week, like becoming a professional musician, and you don't really have the time for that, you might be disappointed when you don't get the results that you want. And listen, we don't all need to be professional musicians. You don't need to commit yourself to hours of practice per week to see progress and change in your voice. Most of my students just want to feel better when singing at karaoke night or singing in their school musical. And most of them only practice a few times a week while making huge strides in their singing. And when I'm talking about them practicing a few times a week, I'm talking about 15 to 30 minutes for a single session. A lot of my adult students practice when driving to or from work and school. And my middle school, high school students will often make their practice as part of their homework routine. The common theme with all of these singers, though, is that they create a practice routine that fits within their schedule, which of course I've talked about before on other episodes, not the other way around. If you're trying to become a professional singer, you're going to have to put in a lot of time and resources to make that goal happen. For example, Catherine Whitbeck, the singer I had on the podcast a few weeks ago, has put in years of training and practice to be where she's at now. I'm not saying that trying to go pro is impossible or that it will take years. Everyone's timeline is different, of course. But it definitely takes time, practice, and investing in things like lessons and training programs. And it's okay if you're like, you know what? Nah, that is too much time and energy for me. I just want to creatively express myself and learn about my voice. That is totally okay. Having a creative outlet is so beautiful. We all need creative outlets to express ourselves. But getting back to the goal side of things, I'm a prime example of someone who looked at my goal and was later like, yeah, no, this is not for me. Because when it came to whether I wanted to pursue a serious career in opera and classical music, I decided that the sacrifice of time and working my butt off to maybe get a small role and earn a minimal amount of money was not what I wanted for myself. Anyway, even just having a creative outlet where you learn how your voice works will get you results, and it's worth setting goals that you have the time and energy for. Now, to recap, when it comes to the 3 big reasons why singing goals fail, it's because 1, they're too vague, 2, they're too big, and 3, they're not entirely compatible with the singer's schedule, meaning that the singer is trying to commit themselves to a goal that takes more of a time investment than the time that they actually have. Again, this is not to pass judgment on any singer who has experienced these kinds of mistakes. I've experienced them. Mistakes are things to learn from, as I said earlier. And if we do find ourselves in these kinds of situations where we have overcommitted ourselves, it's worth showing ourselves some self-compassion and being kind to ourselves. It is not the end of the world if you make a mistake. The world will not end tomorrow if you make a mistake today. And beating yourself up because you don't accomplish something won't bring you any closer to where you want to be vocally. But when you are thinking about your own singing goals, consider these things that I talked about today. All right, friends, that is it for today's episode. If you liked this episode, I'd love it if you could leave a 5-star rating and review. If you want to work with me, I'm accepting new members in my Curious Singer membership, which includes access to weekly feedback on your singing through WhatsApp, access to my extensive warm-up library, and discounts on lessons, baby. If you want to find out more, visit the link in the show description. For more singing tips, follow me on Instagram and TikTok. Those are also linked in the show description. And in the meantime, happy singing, y'all.